Greetings from New York. It's a bit cold here, but we've kept ourselves warm and we are all set for the show. And today,
I got the appointment right in the middle of COVID.
Meet Sanda Ojiambo, the Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact, a UN body that motivates companies to think about the strategic development goals and how to integrate them in their business strategies and operations.
I'll be in command of this flight outbound today to New York.
Also on this show, the importance of Kenya Airways resuming flights on the Nairobi-New York route. And on My Magical Kenya, I will share my magical experience in the Buffalo Springs National Reserve in Isiolo County. She was appointed the Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact while she was working at Safaricom in Kenya. And this was during a crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. But she managed to navigate through and later settled here in the US. This is the story of Sanda Ojiambo. She holds a position that commands global attention. A dream come true for Sanda Ojiambo, who has always set her goals high. Sanda was working with Safaricom as head of sustainable business and social impact when the opportunity to join the United Nations Global Compact as the executive director came knocking.
The UN Global Compact is a special initiative that was set up in the year 2000 by the then Secretary General Kofi Annan. And the purpose of the compact, when he founded it, he said, is he wanted to bring a human face to the global market. Essentially, what the UN Global Compact does is align businesses to work with 10 principles. We call them the 10 principles of the Global Compact, which are around human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. So it's about responsible business, it's about corporate sustainability, and over time, it's become about how businesses can help deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. So essentially, to date, 20 years on, it's a movement of more than 11,000 companies and 3,000 non-business participants, all working to drive corporate sustainability, responsible business, and to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals.
Some of the Kenyan member companies are Kenya Airways, Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, Equity Bank, and Kenyan.
In Kenya, we're represented by the entity, what we call our local network. It's the Global Compact Network Kenya. And the Global Compact Network Kenya is housed and partners with CAM, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. There's a broad number of SMEs as well. I don't want to create the impression that the Global Compact is only large companies. There's a significant number of SMEs as well that are partners of the Global Compact in Kenya and also globally.
And you may be wondering, just how does one land such a powerful job?
Well, I actually applied for the job. The job was advertised. It was quite a lengthy interview process. I went through a number of stages, both with recruitment firm, with the UN Global Compact Advisory Board, and ultimately with the UN, culminating in an interview with the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohammed. She was in New York at the time. We did it virtually, but it was a long and very extensive interview process that got me here.
Sanda got the appointment right in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and she spent the first part of her job working virtually from her home country, Kenya.
It's been quite a journey. I reflect on the last 5 months and so much has happened. I mean, COVID has brought so much, first of all, time for reflection, but also so much change. I couldn't join physically New York at the time because, to be honest, the borders were closed anyway, even if I'd wanted to come over. But towards the end of August, when the Kenyan airspace was opened, and I started thinking about relocation. But settling in has been pleasant. The team has been most supportive, even though we're all working virtually at this point in time.
Sanda went to Hospital Hill and Nairobi primary schools and did her O-levels in the UK.
I did my undergraduate at McGill University in Montreal. There I studied economics and international development. I then did my graduate school at the University of Minnesota, where I studied public policy and development economics.
She is full of praise for Safaricom as the place that greatly prepared her for her current position.
I was at Safaricom for close to 12 years. It's really the place where I began my work on sustainable business and the SDGs under the leadership of our former CEO, the late Bob Collymore, who was a fantastic mentor and guide in this area. So at Safaricom, I headed the two foundations, Safaricom Foundation and M-Pesa Foundation. We built the M-Pesa Foundation Academy, which I think still remains one of the best schools on the continent for bright, talented, but underprivileged kids. We pioneered the integration of the Sustainable Development Goals into corporate strategy. We also launched a wide range of, we call them technology for development products and services, how you use mobile for agriculture, for health, and for education. So I held a very broad portfolio, but I'd sum it up by saying all of it really led towards how you can demonstrate that a company can do business, but also do good at the same time. And we called it the principle of having purpose, but also delivering on profit.
Sanda has dared to work in many hardship areas too.
Yeah, I started the early days of my career in Somalia. I worked with Care International in Somalia. I then worked with UNDP for a short time in Somalia. Thereafter, I worked in a health NGO that covered the entire African continent. So I had the privilege to serve, close to, sub-Saharan Africa, more than 40 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And that marked the first 11 years of my career. Thereafter, I joined Safaricom for the latter 11 years.
Sanda Ojiambo's story continues. In the meantime, let's shift our attention to the aviation sector. And Kenya Airways is back on the Nairobi-New York route, 8 months since it suspended its flights to New York due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we sought to find out, what does this resumption mean to Kenya and the world? The aviation sector has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many borders are still closed, but amid the challenges, determined airlines are flying where possible. Kenya opened its skies to international flights on August 1st, 2020. KQ's resumption of the New York route comes 4 months later. Flight KQ002 Nairobi, New York touched down at the JFK International Airport Terminal 4 on Monday at 6:10 a.m. local time or 2:10 p.m. Kenyan time. The pilot in command was Captain Irene Koki Mutungi.
I'm excited about us resuming the New York route. As we can see, we have a good load, which shows we're actually coming back. COVID had a big impact on the industry as a whole. Airlines had to downsize, there are a lot of job losses, but this is a positive turn and I hope it will get better.
USA is the largest source of international tourists to Kenya, according to the Kenya Tourism Board.
Fortunately for us, the traveler has reset the way we look at the journey, the travel journey, from beginning to end. The reason it's important for every destination to be able to work together with their aviation partner, their airport partner, and their civil aviation or their travel trade partners is because the consumer is looking at the whole travel experience as one thread. They want a seamless thread from when they leave home. It's as demanding from the time I begin to book the flight. What information are you giving?
Sarah Kians, a tour operator who brings tourists to Kenya, said she was hopeful the tourism sector will begin to peak despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'm very willing to tell my clients at home that Kenya is a much safer place than New York or even the United States. They have, is it become more compliant? They've understood the protocols and it feels a whole lot safer than what I'm going back to. But really, God bless Kenya. It's, people ask me. And I said it's the people. What better time than to be out in the bush or even at the beach? No, I'm convinced I can make a difference.
Passengers on board were gifted with magical Kenya souvenirs. By March this year, Kenya Airways had completed 594 flights to and from New York. It had flown over 100,000 passengers.
This flight is very important because it's a direct flight. So I'm going to save in terms of time because it's only 15 hours from Kenya to the US. This means a reunion with my family. It means being able to travel again.
And what is the frequency?
A lot of people have been asking when we are going to come back, and we are happy now that we are back. And we have seen a very good uptake of demand given the current circumstances. Initially be operating 2 flights a week, and then next year when we look at summer, we will probably be looking at how we can adjust the capacity upwards depending on how we see demand evolving.
Earlier, I had a one-on-one interview with Kenya's Cabinet Secretary in charge of Transport, James Macharia, on the significance of the resumption of these flights.
I'm glad that we are reopening the route. People love it because 15 hours from here, you sleep, you are in New York, as opposed to taking 25 hours going through Europe. So we are happy that we are reopening after closing down. But this is of course will be reduced in terms of frequency because number of passengers have dropped for all airlines. But it's a very critical area in terms of also enhancing the tourism sector between Kenya and the United States, even in terms of transportation of fresh flowers. This Dreamliner, which flies to New York, it carries in the belly about 40 tons of cargo. And so that cargo helps in terms of our flower exports. It gets to New York much fresher because you don't have to go through Europe. And so the value to the farmer also goes up. And I think that's something which is very important for us to restart again.
That package leads us into a short break. When we return, we will continue with the story of Sanda Ojiambo, the Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. Also ahead. Welcome back. Today we are coming to you from New York, and our guest is Sanda Ojiambo, the Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. Sanda Ojiambo is from a family of achievers. Her father, the late Dr. Hilary Ojiambo, was Kenya's first cardiologist and co-founder of Kenya Cardiac Society in 1980. Her mother, Professor Julia Ojiambo, a nutritionist, was Kenya's second female elected member of parliament in 1974. She was the first female assistant minister in Kenya during Jomo Kenyatta's administration, and she is currently the University of Nairobi Council Chair. Sanda says her parents' influence in her life is huge.
Definitely. I don't think there's anybody who is not influenced by their parents. In first of all, the most basic and maternal way, how you are brought up and the values that you hold near and dear. And I cherish both my parents actually for instilling in us a couple of values and disciplines. Hard work, service to community, and also just, trying to read wide and be as broad-minded as possible. I credit my parents for that. Career-wise, they've been great, supporting what you'd like to do in a career. So I'm a social scientist by training, having studied economics and public policy, but they've always been very supportive of my work, whether it was in the NGO sector or in the corporate sector, and certainly now here at the UN.
But has life been all smooth for her?
Life hasn't always been easy, and I think it's very important to give that balanced story. Also, being on the road, it takes a toll. You know, working in the NGO sector, I would be away from home for many days at a time, many weeks at a time. It's not easy. So I think always finding that balance, being able to connect back with family and friends is important.
As the current executive director of the United Nations Global Compact, Sanda says her vision is to see companies take faster strides in the integration of sustainable development goals in their business strategies, with COVID-19 presenting even bigger challenges. I asked her view on how companies like Kenya Airways can align themselves to the changing times.
For Kenya Airways, when they joined, I think also being a leader in the aviation industry. But as we talk about recovering from COVID and building forward better, I think the challenges for the aviation industry are very many. You know, how do they become more efficient and more effective in an era when air travel is on the decline? How do they look at things such as their fuel emissions, their carbon footprint, and look at what their contribution is around the environment? So that it's an opportunity for the industry, as well as, you know, many other businesses, to relook at what their future business models may look like at this point in time. We've all gotten so used to working virtually, but at the same time, the airline industry must almost reinvent itself.
Indeed, COVID-19 has changed things, and the aviation sector and traveling at large will no longer be the same. When it comes to living and working abroad, Sanda warns that abroad is not necessarily a bed of roses.
If you're going to go abroad to work, you know, make sure it's work that will fulfill your passions and your joys, and you'll be satisfied with that job, because I think that's most important. So you need to be confident that what you're doing is going to add value to you. That's that. Look at the opportunities. You know, what else do you do aside from work? So be somewhere where there's also a good social support system, where there's social things that you can do, cultural things you can do, and immerse yourself fully in what you do abroad. I would say don't only seek to come abroad for a job. Come abroad for a life and see what else you can gain.
In conclusion, this is Sanda's advice to the youth.
You know, my advice to the younger generation as a whole, I think, first of all, the future of work or the world of work is going to be significantly different. Education is key. I think at this point in time, you know, technology is going to be a key driver of what the future looks like. So access to technology is important. I think for anybody, what is very important is building up the right skills for work and the right attitude. To young girls in particular, I'd say seek mentorship, seek guidance, and always seek to make the right decisions that are good for you as a young person and are in line with what your future aspirations are.
A very powerful parting shot there from Sanda Ojiambo. Time now for the last segment of our show, My Magical Kenya. And this is to indicate that I may be a global trotter, but I find time for my home country. I was in Buffalo Springs National Reserve before I flew to New York, and this was my experience there. Welcome to Buffalo Springs National Reserve in Isiolo County, one of the hidden gems of northern Kenya with a remarkable flora and fauna.
Buffalo Springs National Reserve was established in 1948 as Isiolo Samburu Game Reserve. It was taken over by the County Council in 1963. With the approval of the County Council, the reserve was gazetted. Since then, until 2013, the reserve was manned by the County Council of Isiolo. 2013, it was taken over by the County Government of Isiolo.
The reserve is known for natural springs, and that's where its name originates.
Here we have a lot of unique things, like springs. We have even a natural springs there, natural swimming pool, whereby people are coming and swim. So because of that, We can even generate a lot of money here.
Hi, habari zenu? Mnajienjoy? Wow. Yes, this is the center of the springs that give life to the Buffalo Springs National Reserve. A good place for picnic should you find a moment to visit the park. But before we go swimming, my guide, Billy Lechao, who works for Sarova Shaba Lodge, shows me more magical scenes.
It's warm. The unique thing about Buffalo Spring is actually it directs water to every part of this game reserve. And again, at a certain time, like for example now, all the animals must come and drink water from here. So for example, if there are guests going around Buffalo Springs and the timing is actually good, then they will have to come back to Buffalo Springs just to have a target or have a look at the animals, because this water actually attracts animals. Unlike going direct to the river, some of the animals will come and take water from here.
This pool will always be on the backlist of the Buffalo Springs visitors. Well, I was not left behind. That was quite refreshing, quite magical. A pool I would always jump into should I visit the Buffalo Springs National Reserve again. Wow, from Samburu to New York, very interesting sights and sounds there. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and on behalf of my cameraman here in New York, David Amateshe, and the entire Chams media team in Nairobi, many thanks for watching, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.